If Baldur's Gate 3 was your first CRPG obsession, congratulations. You've opened a very dangerous door, and behind it are cursed kingdoms, generation ships, Soviet wastelands, demon crusades, and one game where evil already won before you pressed new game.
You alone dictate the path of the people.
Tyranny is one of the cleanest examples of a CRPG built around a premise instead of just a rule set. The war between good and evil already happened. Evil won, and you play as a Fatebinder. Part judge, part Imperial agent, part extremely uncomfortable human resources department for a conquering empire. What makes it special is how quickly it gives your role political weight. Before the main story even starts, the conquest opening lets you decide pieces of the war that shape the world you're walking into. So your character isn't just entering history, they've already damaged it. The combat can get repetitive, and the ending has a reputation for feeling abrupt. But as a role-playing concept, Tyranny still cuts harder than games twice its size. And if Tyranny is Obsidian, asking what happens after evil wins, Deadfire is Obsidian asking what happens when a god walks into the ocean and every political faction immediately tries to profit from it. Pillars of Eternity 2 takes the classic party-based CRPG formula and gives it a nautical spine. You're sailing through the Deadfire archipelago, chasing the reborn god Eothas, but the real game is in the islands, factions, companions, and political compromises you keep stumbling into. It's polished, fully voiced, rich with builds, and much more colorful than the first Pillars. The caveat is that it's still lore-heavy, and the ship combat was never the main reason to play. But Deadfire is exactly the kind of RPG that makes you ask, how did this not become bigger? Maybe the thing you loved most in BG3 wasn't the politics or the factions. Maybe it was the dice, the positioning, and the tiny tactical disasters that happen when one goblin has high ground.
The Manakalan Empire.
Solasta is the rules-first answer to that craving. It uses the D&D 5.1 SRD and builds almost everything around clear, readable, turn-based combat.
Magic.
Reactions, cover, light, verticality, concentration, opportunity attacks, the whole tabletop machinery ticking away in front of you.
To harness this power.
You create the entire party yourself, which gives it a real home table feeling, but also means you should not come here expecting BG3-style companion drama.
Some monsters.
The story and presentation are modest. The tactical design is the point. If you loved the dice more than the cinematics, Solasta deserves a look.
Sure that never again, Solasta falls into an age of chaos and darkness.
The world wound.
Solasta is the clean tabletop combat pitch. Wrath of the Righteous is what happens when the rulebook falls down the stairs, opens to 12 pages at once, and somehow becomes a power fantasy.
Into the abyss.
This is not a gentle recommendation. Wrath is huge, dense, and gloriously unreasonable. The kind of RPG where character building can feel less like picking a class and more like negotiating a legal contract with your future self.
There are no common folk.
But if that sentence made you curious instead of afraid, there's a monster of an RPG here. You lead a crusade against a demonic invasion, build a 6-person party through an absurdly deep Pathfinder system, and choose mythic paths that can turn you into an angel, demon, lich, trickster, cosmic judge, or something even stranger.
To mortals.
Crusade mode is divisive, and the game is not obscure among CRPG sickos, but for BG3 players ready for the deep end, this is the warning sign and the treasure map.
Are you ready to ascend? And if you're ready, which path will you choose?
My father has Colorado in the palm of his hand.
After that much demon slaying, mythic power, and feat planning, it's probably healthy to trade the spellbook for a shotgun and go ruin Colorado politics instead. Wasteland 3 is a party-based post-apocalyptic CRPG where your desert rangers are sent into frozen Colorado to make a deal with a tyrant because your own people are desperate. That's the good stuff right there. Every solution feels useful, ugly, or both. The combat is turn-based, punchy, and readable, with cover, action points, squad roles, vehicles, pets, and enough build variety to make your team feel authored. It is not some tiny secret. It reviewed well and launched broadly, but fantasy CRPG fans still skip it too often. If you want choices, consequences, cults, clowns, guns, and moral compromises in the same blender, Wasteland 3 absolutely earns its place. Wasteland 3 gives you a broken society after the bombs. Colony ship asks what happens when the apocalypse is sealed inside one failing vessel and nobody can leave. This is probably the strongest true hidden gem pick here. Colony ship is set aboard a generation ship heading for Proxima Centauri, except generations of class conflict, religion, scarcity, and political decay have turned the ship into its own pressure cooker civilization. Mechanically, it's old school in the best and least forgiving ways. Your build matters. A talker, thief, technician, and combat specialist do not see the same game. Doors close, skill checks bite, bad characters suffer. The production values are modest, but if you want choices that actually limit you, Colony Ship is quietly vicious. And if Colony Ship is old-school design with sci-fi steel walls, Skaldi is old-school design dragged through candlelight, rot, and cosmic dread. Skalda looks like it crawled out of a cursed Commodore 64, and I mean that as praise. It's a modern dark fantasy CRPG with tile-based exploration, turn-based combat, party building, grim pixel art, and a thick Lovecraftian mood. The trick is that the retro style is not just nostalgia wallpaper. It shapes the pacing, the danger, the feeling that every little room might contain a secret, a corpse, or something you really should not have touched. It is smaller and simpler than the giants on this list, and the presentation will filter people instantly. But for the right player, Skaldi feels like finding a lost RPG from an alternate timeline. But the final pick leaves the haunted archipelago behind and heads into a wasteland that feels less polished, more awkward, and sometimes more alive because of it. Atom RPG is a Soviet-flavored, old Fallout-inspired CRPG full of skill checks, turn-based fights, strange settlements, rough edges, and talkative weirdos who probably should not be trusted with public infrastructure. It is not Wasteland 3-level polished. The translation can feel odd, the pacing can be lumpy, the humor can miss, and the early game can punish bad builds. But that mess is also the charm. Atom feels like a game made by people who genuinely miss the era when RPGs were dense, strange, and a little hostile. If you want personality jank and Soviet wasteland energy, that's the door.